in the presentation, we talked about the importance of weight room safety and coming up with your weight room safety orientation and making sure that we don't have any failure in supervision or instruction or lack of warning. So we're going to dive into that a little further with some other components that we need to focus on to keep the weight room safe. So let's first start with one of the questions that we get a lot is, when can kids start training? Well, this is some information that was released from the Mayo Clinic, and the reality is the concept of training and training properly or building good habits of movement can start at a very, very young age. Now, the idea of resistance training, as long as it's progressive and we're not adding heavy loads of resistance until the students have a very, very good foundation and they're maturing into that kind of age range that we want them to start training at, which allows them to start really gaining strength and better body control and movement. So the point is that we can start kids very young with proper movement patterns, proper habits. They can use PVC pipes, they can learn how to train, and they can be power cleaning and having fun, but they don't necessarily have to be lifting resistance. The resistance will come as they start to mature and they build that great foundation of strength. And you'll see a lot of people start training kids, in that 5th, 6th, 7th grade range, and that's wonderful. But make sure that we're adding resistance when appropriate based on technique and that basic foundation of strength. They have everything mastered, they're starting to grow and develop, then we can start to gradually add very small components of resistance and gradually build them up over a long period of time. So again, let's move forward in some other safety components. Now this is a guideline breakdown of a lot of important things in regards to your weight room. I'm not going to cover them all, you can read through them as I talk here, but I want to highlight just a couple. Having a first aid plan, that's an important part of your safety orientation. So when you do set up your orientation, make sure to create our first aid plan for our school or our facility, and then teach that as part of your orientation. What's our expectation if somebody does get hurt or there's some type of emergency? And most schools have those things in place. Just adapt it to your facility, to your room, and teach that as part of your orientation. The next on the list there is displaying technique posters and safety posters. Again, such a vital component to reinforcing what you teach. You have to have that visual stimulus so kids can remember what you're teaching. If you just say it once and you just cover it in orientation, it's not going to stick. You got to make sure that you reinforce it over and over and over again. Next, establish a dress code and enforce it. Have a set standard of what your expectations are in the room. Post it in multiple spots in the room. Make sure kids know they can't wear jewelry, maybe no open-toed shoes. Whatever the rules are that you want to implement in your room, set the standard and then make sure kids know what those expectations are. From there, let's look at the idea of cleaning and maintenance. Make sure that all vinyl in the room is cleaned on a regular basis. Right? Use those antibacterial wipes, wipe off the vinyl, anything that's in use, and make sure that you record that when you're doing that. What's your schedule of cleaning the vinyl? Ideally, it would be daily. Every time we have kids using it or sweating on it, we should clean it. Now again, I know budgets are tight and things can impact whether you can do it on a daily basis, but do the best you can with the tools you have and get them as clean as often as possible. A couple other things is maintain that maintenance log. If you have equipment that's broken, get it maintained and maintain stuff based on the manufacturer's recommended maintenance plan. Do your best to keep your equipment up and running. If you take good care of it, it'll last a very, very long time. Most equipment is made to last a long time. Usually equipment that's what's considered commercial grade, that's in a facility like a school or a college or a gym, it's made to last, especially if it's taken care of. So do a good job of taking care of your equipment. A couple other things. We mentioned the posters. We have access to a lot of these. You're welcome to use them. There's just some great stuff here that reinforces the technique, whether it's safety or technique or the 6 absolutes. There's a lot of stuff that helps kids understand what the expectations are of safety and proper technique. Okay, so make sure you have that visual stimulus in your room. A couple other things. Let's talk about spotting. Now, we've hit this with every core lift, but spotting is one of those things that, again, can sometimes kind of just fall down as time progresses, right? We start to slowly release our importance of it, and we let kids slide and not maybe put as much emphasis on those little details. I want you to watch this video clip here, and I want you to assess this based on what you saw in the bench press video that we showed you of how to spot properly, and I want you to compare that with what you see here. Let's watch this clip. scary clip to see, and I want you to understand, how powerful it is to have kids in a position where they're doing a lift that could very easily get them hurt. So spotting cannot fall down. We can't let things relax. Spotting always has to be very focused and very dialed in. Again, we want to avoid proximity spotting. If you notice, we're going to watch this one more time, and I hate to have you do that, but I want you to look closely. The person in the red shirt, their hands, when they're over on the far side, their hands are close, but they're not actually directly under the bar. And what happens is when the lifter fails, it happens so fast that the person in the red shirt whose hands are here, they're not able to get to here fast enough to stop the bar from landing on the lifter. Now again here, when you compare this to how we would spot this, they're missing a back spotter, which should have their hands directly under the bar. Now they start that way, but then they rotate, and that puts that lifter at a little more risk. So make sure you keep the back spotter engaged, hands directly under the bar. Side spotters, not hands here on the side, or not hands on the hip or on the thighs, but hands directly under the bar, ready to support that weight if needed. Check this out again and watch the person in the red shirt's hands, and notice that they're not quite quick enough because their hands aren't in the proper position. So again, just recapping, making sure spotting never gets relaxed. Keep it as the most important part of what you teach, and really teach the kids to protect each other and make that spotting a priority. Okay, moving on to a couple other components. Now, when you look at your weight room, the design of your room is very important. And a lot of times with weight room design, less is more. So here's an example of a room that's got the racks in it, it's got some auxiliary pieces, but it's got a nice big open space for teaching and for dynamic movement, for your warm-ups, for your lunges, for your plyometrics, for anything you want to do in your weight room. Remember, you don't need to fill a room with a ton of equipment. There's so many things you can do with open space. And that's a great thing for a student athlete, learning how to train, learning how to have stability and balance during an activity like a lunge. So make sure when you look at your space, you coordinate open space. This is another example of a room with some cardio equipment, some selector equipment, some wall-mounted chin-up bars. It's a great room because the whole center of the room is open. It's set up for them to be able to hit their cardio, hit their fitness things that they want to train, but still have open room in the center of the room to do those other dynamic and balance and stability work. Right? Open space is critical to a very effective weight room. Okay, from here, again, another example of this. Here you have a rack that has all the, kind of the attachments and the components you would need. Everything can be done in one station. You add in all the components for variable resistance, all the bars you would need. Everything can very easily be done in one station, allowing for less movement in the weight room. And then they can go from that station out into the other areas for their dynamic movement. And there are things that are going to be a little bit more focused on stabilization or agility or plyometrics or other components of training. So you want to have a very clean and organized weight room. Now let's look at the kind of opposite side of this. There's very often mistakes that are made in weight rooms that put kids at risk. You have dumbbells on the floor here. You have old vinyl that's not cleaned up and not even enclosed, or you got the foam exposed. And I mean, just think of what kind of bacteria could be growing there. The key here in a weight room is to not put yourself in a position to let the weight room fall into ruins, and then also put your kids at risk. So think about this from a legal perspective if a kid does get hurt. From a legal perspective, somebody who's in the legal field would come into this room, and let's say you had a kid get hurt because there wasn't spotting in the bench press. Well, then they're going to look at the room, and they're going to find other parts of your room where you have failed to keep the room safe and efficient. And they're going to build a case of negligence to say that, well, the reason that we had a lifter get hurt doing a bench press is because look at how poorly and mismanaged this room is. You got broken equipment, you got dumbbells on the floor, you have broken mirrors, look at these bars leaned up in the corner without any stability or support. They very easily could have hurt the student. It's not about necessarily where they got hurt, it's about the management of the entire room. Kids get hurt in the weight room, kids get hurt in life, people do all over the place in all sorts of different areas. The key for us is to minimize those risks, and that means we have to be proactive. We've got to take away the risks as much as possible. So look at your room from kind of a different set of lenses here and ask yourself, where could a student get hurt? Can a student get hurt here in this activity? Do I have these things poorly stored? Are they not really safe and secure? Find ways to look at your room to make sure that you're not leaving things out that would put kids at risk. You've got to have that kind of different perspective of that safety side of the weight room. Right? The key here is to be ahead of the game, be proactive. And again, that helps us. We do that with our safety orientation. We can really assess the room completely during that orientation. Okay, again, other mistakes. I mean, look at these bars. They're so close to one another. You have lifters that can hardly lift because the bars are almost touching. You have a treadmill where the whole motor is exposed. These are things that we can avoid if we're proactive. And again, these things happen in weight rooms all over the country, putting kids at risk. It's our job as the professional to minimize these risks. Now, if you have a piece of equipment that's broken and it's unusable, mark it off, put tape around it, put a sign on it, take a picture of that, and send that to your administration. Let them know on this date, at this time, you took that piece of equipment out of commission. Let all the other teachers know. Send it to everybody in the department. Send it to all the other teachers and coaches who access the weight room. Let them know that the treadmill or the pec deck or whatever it may be is out of commission, and nobody should use it from this day forward until we get it fixed. That way, everybody's on the same page, and that piece of equipment will not be used. Nobody's going to be at risk. But you've got to take that proactive approach. You can't sit back and wait until somebody gets hurt to be focused on the safety of the room. Now is the time to make your room as safe and efficient as possible. Don't wait. One of the greatest parts of the BFS program is the set rep system that we've put in place to help kids break personal records. Now, for me, growing up, I did the BFS program as a student athlete, and one of the greatest motivating factors was this concept of me breaking personal records. And that's the focus of the BFS personal set rep system. It focuses on each student athlete competing against their best efforts as opposed to comparing themselves with others. You're focused on breaking a minimum of 8 personal records a week, always stressing getting better compared to your own best efforts. And I know for myself as an athlete, that's what motivated me. That's what kept me coming back, because I could see that every single day I was getting a little bit better. I was getting closer to my goals, things I wanted to accomplish as a student athlete. So when we understand the program, here's that progression. Here's how it works. We have kids master body weight first. That's that door number 1. And again, we explained this earlier in the presentation. Let's see how it connects to the recording. So we have body weight first. Once kids master that, then we transition into the readiness program. The readiness program, again, is the first level of resistance training where you as the teacher, the coach, or the professional, you get to coordinate how fast they add resistance. Then, at the end of the readiness program, there's going to be graduation standards, things that they have to master and hit before they move to the full set rep system, which is the rotational set rep scheme that allows for just amazing amounts of growth and focus on breaking personal records. The key here, again, is teaching the kids to understand how to build that balanced program, how to progress to a more advanced program, and then how to really break records and see themselves grow and get better on a daily basis. We never want to see kids plateau and flatten out. We always want kids motivated to continue to grow and get better. And a rotational set rep scheme allows for that to happen. It's fun and it's exciting. The kids get to chart and track all the records that they have available, and they have a lot of fun breaking those personal records. Remember, you can't break records if you don't record records. You've got to have the data. You've got to record the baseline data if you want to start breaking records. As soon as you have those baseline numbers, the kids have a ton of fun as they start to see the success of their hard work paying off. We're going to show you a video here that breaks down how to implement the recording. In this video, you'll see an online little app that breaks down how to teach the set rep log to your kids coming into the program when they graduate from the readiness program. That little app is on the Online Learning Center. So when you're teaching this after you've passed your online test, you'll have access to that little app. You can jump on, you can teach your kids, make sure they understand how to do the set rep log the same way that you teach it, so they're writing in their records the appropriate way, gathering the right data, and then they're really having fun as they start to break those 8 records a week.
The great thing about training young student athletes is showing them progress, getting them excited to get better than they were the day before. But the only way that you can break records is if you keep records. And so we're going to go through the importance of proper record keeping through your progression of training a beginning student athlete. The first thing for us is always training with body weight first, assessing technique, making sure they have proper movement patterns and they feel comfortable doing the basic lifts that we're going to be teaching. From there, we transition into what's called the readiness program. The readiness program can be administered through booklet, through our online app. It's just an kind of a introductory training program into resistance training. So here's how it looks. The readiness program, and again this is what you would see in the booklet here. The readiness program is broken down with our basic 6 core lifts that we teach. In the BFS program, we teach these basic 6 core lifts, and then we progress from there as kids get more advanced. The box squat is used to teach how to parallel squat, get them used to the squatting motion. It's also a benefit for in-season athletes as they progress. But that's our first squat introduction. And from there we get into the parallel squat. Same thing on the bench press. We teach the towel bench press first, and then we progress to the more advanced full range of motion bench press. And then again, those can be adjusted out as the kids get more experienced, and they can go into higher level training with different core lifts and activities. We use the hex bar deadlift to begin to teach that proper movement pattern of the beginning stages of a power clean, and then we progress into the power clean. So in the readiness program, it's very simple. We start at the lightest weight possible after going from body weight training. So with our body weight, we use a lot of PVC pipes, simple things to get the kids feeling like they're training with weight. You can also use body bars, things that, the neoprene covered bars, if you have access to those. So you can transition from, no weight at all to 2 or 4 or 6 or 8 pounds progressively as they get a little stronger. The lightest Olympic bar that's made is a 15-pound bar, and that also applies to a 15-pound hex bar. So we use those to begin, and from this point on, we can potentially go up in 5-pound increments. What we're looking at is technique and effort. We base technique off of the 6 absolutes, which are the 6 kind of technical things, the biomechanics of the different lifts that we want to keep in proper alignment. So each student would start at 15 pounds. They can progress through this program at any given rate based on your recommendations as the teacher or the coach. So if it's really easy and light at 15 pounds, no problem. They can progress a little bit faster. But here's how it works. The box squat and towel bench, as well as the squat and bench press, are set up to be a foundational number of sets and reps, so we can really build a good amount of foundation strength. And so we're going a little higher sets and reps here, 2 sets of 10 on those 4 lifts. Then the 2 down the middle, the clean and the deadlift, we're going to drop down to 2 sets of 5, just to give us a lot of good time to work on perfect form and really learning the movements of those different lifts. As the kids progress, the weights obviously will get heavier as they move forward. They can only move forward based on your recommendation to make sure they have perfect form as they progress. Then at each different core lift, squat, bench, clean, all these 3 main lifts, there's a point of graduation for both men and women. We want them to have this base level of strength before they progress into the next tier of the program, which is a rotational set rep system. This gives us the knowledge to know that each of our student athletes are ready for a little higher level of training. We've been able to prove that they've started at a base level, and we've gradually moved them forward without huge levels of resistance at the beginning. At this point, we would know the student athlete is ready to progress and start to train at a little higher level. So we just finished up with a readiness program. That's where we have a beginning student athlete beginning their training with resistance. And it's a gradual program reaching a certain point of graduation. So we have benchmarks that kids need to progress to and then move into the next tier of the program, which is our rotational set rep scheme. And that's the set rep log book, or using our set rep log app. You can also use our Beat the Computer system. When we get to this portion of the program, it's a rotational set rep scheme broken down into a 4-week cycle, which is what we're going to cover next. We're going to go week by week, breaking down how to actually get baseline numbers and how to really show the kids how to start to break personal records. So here's how we move forward from one portion of the program to the next. We have a student that graduates from the readiness program. So they've given us a certain level of training. We know they have a good foundation. Now they're ready to move forward. So from that foundation, we know for a young man they have to hit 145 pounds for 2 sets of 10 on the parallel squat. And today we're just going to use the parallel squat as our example, but this applies to all the other core lifts that we would do. And it could be any core lift that we want to measure. So today for the parallel squat, we know this young man coming into this stage of the program can do 145 pounds for 2 sets of 10. So they're going to come in, you're going to give them this book, they're going to turn here to the parallel squat page, and they're going to be ready to work. And you've got working sets here, and you've got your rep records here, what we want to record when we break personal records, which is the exciting part, and we'll get to that soon. So here's how it works. They come into week 1. That's where we would begin. So here we are starting week 1. A student has just graduated. They get their book. Let's just say today's date is 1/1. It's the beginning of the month. They're ready to go. The first thing they're going to ask you is, what weight do I start at? So they're going to come to this first set here, and their first set is 3 repetitions. They're going to get into the rack, but they need to know what weight. So all we're going to say to them is, hey, whatever weight you graduated from, and if it's a young man, that's 145 pounds on the parallel squat, and all we're going to say is go to the next available weight. And so for him, if you have 2.5 pound plates, that would be 150 pounds. So he'd step into the rack, do his 150 pounds for a set of 3. When he comes out of the rack, he would record 150 in that box. So now he knows. If you see up here and you look close, in this top right-hand corner, there's an additional box. What he's recording there is a self-assessment of his effort. We use the scale, on a scale of 1 to 10, we want students to be an 11, and that's in the classroom, on the field, at home, anywhere they are. And so we want to gauge their effort in everything they do, so they learn how to self-assess and push themselves outside of their comfort zone. So they say, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how hard did I have to work to get 150 pounds for 3 reps? Well, he knows he can do 145 pounds for 2 sets of 10, so more than likely that number is going to be relatively low. So let's just say he says, well, that's probably a 5. It was my effort. It wasn't too hard. So that now is going to help us pick our next weight as well. There's 2 things that we assess on the next set. If his technique was perfect, he can increase the weight. Also, if the effort number is relatively low, we want to increase the weight to make him work a little harder to give him better results. However, if the technique wasn't perfect, and we judge technique on the BFS 6 absolutes, if the technique is not perfect, then he loses the option to go up in weight. He can stay the same or go down to fix the technical errors. Okay, so let's say this young man had perfect form. So now on his next set, he chooses to go up. So he steps in the rack and he says, I'm going to do 160 pounds. He does his set, he comes out, and he records 160 pounds. In the top right-hand corner, he comes in and records his effort. Let's say that bumped up to an 8. So now, wow, he's starting to work pretty hard. On his last set, if you notice here, the number is 10 reps in which he has to get, because what we're trying to do is establish a baseline. So he comes down to this last set and he says, I've got to get 10. I'm going to lighten the weight back down to 150 to make sure I can get 10. Because I know I've gotten 145 pounds twice for 10, so a 5-pound increase, I can probably get that for 10, no problem. So he puts in 150 on the bar, he gets a set, and he records 150. Here in the actual box, he writes in how many reps did he actually do. He got 10, which was his workout for the day. He comes back to that top right-hand corner. What was his effort on a scale of 1 to 10? So let's just say he goes, yeah, gosh, that was pretty hard. That turned out to be a 9. I really worked hard to get that. So now you've got a working set, or a working weight that he's done for each set, and you've got an effort level. So you know how hard he's worked on every given set. Then from there, we're going to add these 3 weights up. 150 pounds plus 160 plus 150. So that gives us a grand total, which is called a set total, of 460 pounds. That's our set total. From there now, we're going to come up to the top, and we're going to fill in our rep records. We're going to get those numbers filled in so we know that we have a baseline for every single core lift in our first week transitioning from the readiness program to the rotational set rep scheme. So he's going to come here and say, okay, what's the most weight that I've proven to myself that I can do for 10 reps? Well, we know down here he got 150 for 10. So he writes in 150. There's an additional space in here for him to write the date. We want to always record the weight and the date so we know exactly when he did it and how long it takes him to break those records. Then he's going to ask himself, well, how many did I get for 8? Well, on his way to 10, he did 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So his record for 8 is also 150. That would apply for his 6 as well, 150. For his 5 would stay the same. His 4 would also be 150. Then from there, we want to look down at our working sets and say, did he go any higher on any sets of 3? If he did, then the set of 3 is going to be a different number. If you look close, his best set of 3 was 160 pounds. So that is his record for 3. That also would apply because he did that for 2 and 1 on his way to 3. So he'd have all those filled in, he'd get the dates put in place, and he'd have everything filled out from top to bottom for a baseline on his first parallel squat lift. That gives him a starting point, so he knows from here on out he can start to break personal records. And our goal is to have every student athlete break a minimum of 8 personal records a week. And that's across all core lifts, auxiliaries, and performance records. Anything that we record, we can make progress on and show that we're breaking personal records. And then we want to celebrate every record we break on a daily basis to show the kids the importance of that self-motivation of getting better on a daily basis. We've gone through the readiness program. We've also gone through week 1 of the set rep log, how to break or set a baseline of personal records, preparing to break personal records as they progress into week 2, which is where we are now. Week 2 in the off season is a 5x5 workout, so 5 sets of 5 reps. If you have students who are in season or beginners that you want to have it a little bit easier for them, then you can look here and we'll show you the variation. Week 2 can be changed down to a 3x5, so 3 sets of 5 reps each. Okay, so we're going to go through the off-season format on this example, but again, change it as necessary based on who you're working with and what time of year you're working with them. So this student comes in, it's a week later. So for example, our schedule could be squat and bench on Monday. So now we're a Monday later, and we're going to go through our core lifts and auxiliaries and other parts of our training. But today, on the parallel squat, we're going to be recording. So now we are on 1/8, so it's a week later. You're going to get this question all the time. They're going to come in on this second week and they're going to say, okay, now where do I start? And it's very, very simple. All you want them to do is look at how many reps they have to begin with, and they're doing a set of 5 as their first set. So they're going to look up their personal records up here, the rep records, and look at their record for 5. This student's record for 5 is 150 pounds. So what they're going to do is they're going to say, I can start anywhere in that range of 150 plus or minus 10 pounds on either direction. So the lowest they could start on this first set would be 140 pounds. They could also do 145 because that's okay. That's only a 5-pound decrease. They could match their record. If they feel really good, they know that 150 is pretty light for them, they could go to 155 or even up to 160. So you have a 5 or 10 pound window in either direction, plus or minus. So this student comes in and he says, I know I got 150 for 5 because last week I did it for 10. So he's going to match his first set. So he puts 150 on the bar, he does his set, and we come in here and we record 150 for his first set of 5. And then again, just like last week in this top right hand corner, he's going to put in his effort. So for 5, let's say that effort is a 6. So he puts in his effort at 150. From there, we're going to assess 2 things before he picks the weight for his next set. He's going to look at his effort, how hard did I work, can I work harder? And he's going to look at his technique, again based on the BFS 6 absolutes, the basic biomechanics of proper movement during resistance training. As long as his technique was perfect on that set of 150 pounds, he has 3 options. He can go up in weight, he can go down in weight, or he can stay the same. If he had a technical flaw, if there was something wrong with the technique, then he has 2 options. He can stay the same or he can go down. He cannot go up if there's a technical flaw. So right away we emphasize to the student athletes, it's not about the weight. It's about breaking personal records. That's the ultimate goal here. Each of us that train are going to be different. So we're not comparing against one another on our lifts that we do. We're comparing against our best self. How hard can I work to break my records to create myself into the best possible athlete I can become? So for this student, he's going to look up here and say, okay, I did 150 for 5, and I only was a 6 for my effort, so I can work harder. What weight could I pick to break a personal record? Well, obviously, anything over 150 would break his 5. So he's going to go on his next set, and he's going to go to 155. He gets that set done, he records it in, and then he writes in his effort. So with a 5-pound increase, let's say his effort bumps up to a 7. With that set at 155, he's already broken a couple records. If we look here on his rep records, that breaks his 5, but it also breaks his 4. Because on his way to 5, he did 4 reps and then 5 reps. So now his record for 5 and for 4 is 155. So that would be 2 records out of the 8 that he needs for the week. Again, our baseline that we're looking for is 8 personal records a week from every student athlete. So the next set, as long as his technique was perfect, he can go up, down, or stay the same. It's up to him. So he looks around here and says, what weight should I pick? I did a 7. I think I could maybe go up a little bit. So let's say he goes up to 160. He gets 5 reps at 160. Great job. But let's say his effort on that, he feels, wow, I'm tapped out. That was probably a 9. I worked really hard to get that set. So now, on his next set, he has to make a decision. Is it worth staying up here at 160, Or maybe I had a technical error, maybe I should go back down, or maybe I should try and stay the same and see if I can maintain that high level of effort on the next set. So let's say that's what he does. He says, I'm going to do 160 again. And when he does 160 on this next set, he is tapped out. That is a 10. He can't go any harder. That was a lot of hard work for him. So he gets 160 and does a great job. Now he moves to his last set. And what's really exciting about this last set is you see here on the screen that there's a 5+. What that means is the workout is 5 reps. But if he's got anything left over, we want him to get more than 5 if he can, trying to break more personal records up in his rep record category. So now he gets to select a weight and be smart about it. Does he stay at 160? Well, can he break more records with a different weight selection? He can actually look here at his rep records and say, well, if I got 155 for more than 5 reps, I'd have a chance to break more records. So let's say he goes down to 155 and he gets 6 reps. So the actual is going to be 6, and then he writes in his effort. Let's say his effort is a 9. He really, really worked hard on that. He's really proud of the fact that he broke another record. So then from there, we would total the weight up. We'd add all 5 of those sets together, and we get a set total. Once that set total is filled in, then we're going to come up and look at the top of the screen here in the rep records. The rep records are where we get a chance to record the best that we've done. So he's going to look here and say, what's his new best for 6? His new best for 6 is 155 pounds. So he's going to record the weight and the date. Then he asks himself, did I break any other records? Well, the best that he did for 5 in his workout was 160 pounds. So his new for 5 is 160 as the weight, and the date is 1/8. That also breaks his 4. So he hits 160, and he writes in the date. It does not break his 3 because his 3 was already 160. It only tied that. So the only thing we write here is our best record, the best weight that we've done. So we've come down here to the bottom. We finalize this workout by putting in our set total, 780 pounds. So now we know exactly what we lifted, and we know how many records we broke. So on this given workout, he broke 3 personal records, and this is only one core lift. He could have another core lift that same day. He could have auxiliaries. You could test performance, maybe the sit and reach. If you got half an inch further on the sit and reach test, that would be another record. So every single day we're striving to get better as an individual, and then collectively as a group, we can celebrate those successes and make the training fun and keep the kids engaged. We're now on to week 3. And this is where it really starts to get fun and the kids really start to see themselves progress and have fun breaking personal records. We talked about transitioning from the readiness program into the set rep. We've gone over week 1, week 2, how to set a baseline, how to have your first day of record breaking, and now we're into week 3, which is where things start to really get fun and they start to see the variation of sets and reps, which is one of the best parts of having an actual standardized program, is not always doing the same sets and reps. The greatest part of BFS is every single week you have a different set rep scheme to make the body work really hard and get variation. Variation is kind of that important spice of life that we need for growth. So if we always do the same thing, it's much harder for the body to grow, and we usually see the body plateau. So you'll notice here that each week that we cover, it's a different set rep scheme. That allows us to have a 4-week cycle of variation and then come back on the 5th week and compete against previous efforts. And we'll get to that shortly. Just as a reminder, on week 3, when we're working through the set rep system, if you're in the off season, like we showed in this example today, it was a 5-4-3-2-1. If you're in an in-season format, we would cut that down to a 5-3-1 so we can still focus on recovery and not overtraining in season. You can also use the 5-3-1 format if you're in a shorter class period or you have beginners that are just kind of learning the fundamentals of the program and you're short on time. Okay? So, on week 3, we are on 115. That's our date today. The student's going to come in and they're going to know where to start because we talked about in week 2 the basic rule of thumb. If I'm starting at 5 repetitions, I look at my rep records and I have a plus or minus 5 to 10 pound rule, whatever my rep record is. So this student is starting at a set of 5. His rep record for 5 is 160 pounds. So the lowest he could start is at 150. The highest he could start is at 170. Anywhere in that range can be his starting weight selection. So he already knows where to get going. He doesn't need to ask you. He can get to work right away with his group when they get to their station. So let's say he comes in and says, I'm just going to match what I've done, self-assess a little bit, see how my effort is today, and then see where I can break a record. So he matches 160, puts that in there, and he comes up to that top right-hand corner, and again, self-assesses his effort on a scale of 1 to 10, again, wanting to be at his absolute best. So he puts in here, let's say, a 7. He's feeling pretty good today. That wasn't all that hard to get 5 at 160. So then again, quickly, he's going to assess his personal rep records and ask himself, what weight would I pick to break a personal record? His record for 4 is 160. That's also his record for 3, 2, and 1. So on this next set, if he were to pick 165 for 4 reps, he's going to actually break 4 personal records. Because on his way to 4, he does 1 rep, 2 rep, 3, and 4. So he picks 165. When he's done, he puts in here, I got an 8. Does a great job, an 8 on his effort, 165. He just broke 4 personal records. So now he really gets a chance to have some fun here and continue to break records. Each set, he has a choice on his weight selection based on his effort and his technique. If his technique is perfect, based on the BFS 6 absolutes, he can go up, he can go down, or he can stay the same. And the reason we have those 3 options is because sometimes you do need to go down. By going down in weight and maybe doing more reps, you can still break personal records. So the goal here is not to always increase weight. It's not about the weight. It's about personal records and increasing athletic performance. That's the ultimate goal. So as we continue to train, he needs to be smart about his weight selection. And this first 4-week cycle is where they really learn how to record and how to make good weight selections. So he goes down to his next set, which is a set of 3. He knows he just broke his 3 rep record at 165, so he could stay the same if he wants to. He could go up a little bit. It's 100% up to him. If you've got 1¼ pound plates, put one of those on each side. It's a 2.5 pound increase. It's a great opportunity for a student to break a record without a lot of added resistance. So it's up to him. Let's just say all you have is access to right now is 2.5s, which are very common. So let's say he goes to 170. He gets all 3 reps, does a good job. His effort on that's a 9. But let's just say maybe on his last rep, his knees came in a little bit and got out of alignment. So now he knows he can't go up in weight on the next set. Even though we're decreasing reps, because he lost a simple technique, he can't add resistance on the next set. Now, on the next set, if his 2 reps are perfect, then the following set, he can go back up again because it's a set-by-set assessment. If each set, we look at it, and he can fix those technical errors, there's no reason he can't go back up again. We all make mistakes here and there. We want him to have the opportunity to break as many records as possible with perfect form. Never sacrifice technique for pounds. Always focus on increasing resistance and breaking records with perfect form. So on his next set, let's say he says, I'm going to stay the same. I'm going to match it. And that's a 9 again. And he gets 2 reps, does a great job. Now on his last set, you got a 1+. He can do really whatever he wants here. He had perfect form on his set of 2. He can go up, down, stay the same. The goal being here to break personal records. So he looks up here, what can I do? Well, he knows right now, if he got 165 pounds for 1, that's really less than he's done before because he's already done 170 for 2. But if he went down in weight to 165 and he got 5 reps or more, he could break a bunch of records because he's already broken his 4, 3, 2, and 1 just at the weights he's already selected. So it's up to him. He can choose. If he wants to go up in weight and just get 1 or 2, he can increase his 1 or 2 rep max. Or he can try and increase his overall number of records broken by maybe lightening the weight and doing more reps. And that's where you see the 1+ here. There's always going to be a plus on that last set if we have an opportunity to break more personal records. So I think this kid, he's going to make the choice to say, I'm going to go down and see if I can knock out a lot of reps here because I really want to break more personal records. So let's say he ends up getting 5 reps at 165. He really works hard. His effort's a 9. He does a great job. He's really, really proud of that effort. Then we're going to take these 5 working sets and we're going to add them up. Okay, so now we've got 160 plus 165 plus 170 plus 170, and then we add that last 165, and we get a simple set total of 830 pounds. That's his set total for all 5 working sets. So now he comes up here and he looks at his rep records. He asks himself, what's the most that I did on any one of these sets? So let's start down here at the bottom. What's the most that he did on his last set? Well, he got 5 reps at 165 pounds. So he comes to his 5 rep record. Notice we're writing it in the next available box. So the next box that's open, we write it in. He got 165 pounds on 115. Then he comes to his 4. Did he break his 4? Yes. He got 165 there as well. That's his new 4 rep record on the same date. Now for 3, what's the most he did for 3? His best for 3 is 170. And that also applies to his 2 and his 1, because on his way to 3, he did 1 rep, 2 rep, and 3. So his new record for 3 is 170. He got that on the 15th. His new record for 2 is 170. He also got that on the 15th. And his record for 1 is also 170, gotten today on the 15th. Notice that those are written in the next available box. These columns do not associate with the weeks that you're in. You just want to fill in each record whenever you break it. So the next open box, you put it in, and that's why we record the date, so we know how long it took us to break that number of repetition records. The key here, if you look at the rep records, is we want to see a gradual progression of growth across all records. We don't want to see him only breaking his 1 rep record or only breaking his 10 rep record. We want to see everything across the board getting relatively evenly broken as time progresses. Most programs have an emphasis on the 1 rep max, which is not how we look at things in regards to training an athlete. What we really want to see is reps 2 to 8 are kind of your sweet spot for training a student athlete, because that's that window of athletic performance and muscular endurance, right? 10 is your extreme for muscular endurance, and 1 is your extreme for muscular strength. We want to train all components for a student athlete. So every record should be progressing at a relatively even rate, with 1 and 10 being the slowest to progress because they're your hardest. They're your most extremes on both ends. Okay? That's week 3. The goal is, again, always breaking personal records. On this workout, he broke 5 personal records on only 1 lift. He's got multiple other lifts through the week as well as auxiliaries and any other performance tests you do, the goal being a minimum of 8 personal records a week, always competing against your best self. We're now on week 4 of our first 4-week cycle of a rotational set rep scheme. We've gone through the readiness program, getting our students a foundation of strength, having them hit a base level of benchmarks before we move into a more advanced program, which is our rotational set rep scheme. Once they get here, we've already talked about week 1, setting our baseline, week 2, 5x5 or 3x5 for in-season. We've talked about week 3, 5-4-3-2-1 or 5-3-1 for in-season. Now we're on week 4, which is 10-8-6, which is a focus of muscular endurance. And again, we've talked about the importance of set rep variation. So in each week, the body is challenged in a new way. On squats and benches, we use 10-8-6. The only variation is, if we scroll down here to see power clean and deadlift, we use a 4-4-2 format on week 4. The reason being is both power clean and deadlift are very intense lifts on technique, and we want to make sure young student athletes never sacrifice technique for pounds. So we cap the clean and the deadlift on our record keeping at 5 repetitions. So if you look here on week 2 of a power clean or a deadlift, on the last set you don't see a 5+, you only see a 5, because that's it. We never go over 5 reps just for the safety of the student athlete. Okay, getting back to week 4 on our parallel squat example of this student. Now we're on 122. We continue to progress each day where the student gets a chance to break personal records. So we're 4 weeks in, comes in, he's excited to try and break a personal record. So the first thing he's going to do is look up here at his rep record. His rep record for 10 is 150. Now he did that on week 1, so that was done 3 weeks prior. So now he's really ready to go and try and break a record. So on his first set, he goes for 155. He gets 155 for 10. In the top right-hand corner, again, he puts in his effort level. His effort level here is going to be a 9. So he really pushed himself on that. But what was great about that set and coming out strong here is that not only broke his 10, it also broke his 8. See, again, the key here is on their starting sets, they have a weight range they can pick. It's a 5 or 10 pound window, plus or minus. So even though his record was 150, he could have gone all the way down to 140 if he wanted to, depending upon how he feels. We want the students to read their bodies and make great decisions on their weight selection. So they're not just randomly picking weights or just doing the same weights as everybody else in their group. This is an individualized program for each student once they've created their baseline, which is what we did in week 1. So now on his second set, he gets a chance to try and pick a weight that's going to allow him to break more records. Well, now he's already done 155 for 10, which also broke his record for 8. So he could stay the same if 155 he felt like he couldn't get for 8 with perfect form. And let's say that's the case. He had a 9 effort, he really worked hard, and he just maybe felt like his technique was failing just a little bit. So he's going to stay the same. So he does 155. And again, it's an important lesson for the student to learn that you don't always have to increase weight. That's not the goal here. The goal is to better yourself and to always break your personal records, not comparing yourself with anybody else. So he does 155, gets 8, and again, that was a 9. He really worked hard. Now, on the next set, he's going down to 6 reps. So if you notice, each one tears down by 2 repetitions. So now he's at 6. If he looks up here, what's his 6 rep record? It's 155. Well, he's just done that for a 10 and an 8. Chances are good he could go up slightly because we're decreasing the number of reps that he's doing. He wants to try and break a record. If he gets 160, great. If you have 1 1/4 pound plates, he could go up by a total of 2.5 pounds and be at 157.5 and break a record that way. So 1 1/4 gives you a lot of options, but if you only have 2.5s, that's still great. You can go up by 5 pounds and try and get 160 for 6. So let's say on that last set, he gets 160, and boy, he works hard, and his effort's a 10 there. He puts that effort, and he's really, really proud of that. His actual is a 6. He didn't get any extra reps. He wanted to, but his technique wouldn't allow it. He knew he was done, so he racks the weight safely with perfect form on those last 6 reps, and he's done. We don't want to ever sacrifice technique for pounds or for breaking records. So now he comes in here and he adds those 3 sets up, and he gets a set total of 470 pounds. So that's the total weight lifted, adding up 155 plus 155 plus 160. Those are his set totals now for his first week of a 10-8-6 workout. Now he comes up here and he looks at his records. What's his best record for 10? Did he beat it? He sure did. He got 155 on that first set. That beats his 10. 155, and you notice I'm writing it in the next available box. Okay, 155 for 10, and the date that he did it was 122. Then he goes to his 8 rep record. That's also going to be 155. Because he got that for 8 as well, and he did that on 122. Again, notice I'm going to the next available box. Did he break his 6? He did. He got 160 for 6. That breaks his 6, and he did that on 122 as well. He didn't break his 5 because his 5 is at 165. So he broke a 10, 8, and a 6. So he got 3 records out of his 8 for the week. And again, there's other core lifts you'll be doing, auxiliaries, and performance measurements. Any chance you get to exaggerate the importance of breaking a personal record, that's what we want to focus on. Great day for this student today. 3 personal records, getting better every day. And what they've seen now in the first 4-week cycle is how their body really has to adapt to the change. They've got to work in kind of a new format each week. On a 5x5, you have a combination of muscular strength and muscular endurance. On a 5-4-3-2-1, we pyramid down to a true 1 rep max, which is being done at the end of the workout, which we call a true max because we know it's done after they've done the rest of the workout. We never max them out right away. It's always done after a progression. And then we have a muscular endurance work on that week 4 at 10-8-6. We're now on to week 5, which is where we get to really compare ourselves against what we've done in the past and try and get better compared to previous set rep schemes. So we've gone through transitioning from the readiness program, which is our introduction and foundation of strength, kind of our first taste of resistance training. We've hit our benchmarks there to move into the set rep scheme. Now we've gone over week 1, getting our baseline, our week 2, week 3, and week 4, the rotational set rep scheme where the body's challenged with a new set rep scheme each week. Now we're on to week 5. Now we come in and we have a chance to compete against previous efforts on the same set rep scheme. This is where it really gets to be fun because the kids can really see progress after a 4-week cycle. So let's get into it. Okay, so now we are a month later, so we're just going to say it is 2-1 because we started our date at 1-1. So now we're 2-1. We come into our first set of 3. Again, we look at our rep record for 3. This student's is 170. So he has a 5 to 10 pound plus or minus window to start that first set. He could start as low as 160, He can go as high as 180 based on how he feels that day after his warm-up. So he's ready to go. He comes in, let's say he says, you know what, I'm going to break a record right out of the gate. I feel good today. I'm warmed up. I'm ready to go. He goes to 175 pounds. He breaks his first record, and he puts in his effort. Says, today that was an 8. I feel pretty good. I got a great record on that first set. So if you look here at his rep records, that breaks his 3, his 2, and his 1. So on his first set, coming out of the gate, he broke 3 records. So he's feeling pretty good. Now on his next set, let's say he goes, you know, I'm going to push a little harder. I think I can get more. So I'm going to do 180 pounds. So he goes up a little bit more. He gets 180 for 3. He puts a 9 in his effort. He really, really works hard. At that point, he knows I probably can't go up again, which is great because he realizes that on this last set, if again we notice the plus sign. The plus sign means get as many as you can up to 10 with perfect form. And we never want to sacrifice technique for pounds. So he looks up here and says, gosh, I got 180 for 3. That broke my 3, 2, and 1 by 10 pounds on each of those. So he's feeling really good about that. Now he comes and says, well, what weight could I pick to continue to progress and break more records? He was at 180. He looks up here and says, well, I got a 3 plus. If I get 4 at 170, that breaks my 4. If I get any more than that, a 5 or a 6, that continues to break those records. So he's going to actually drop the weight by 10 pounds to 170 and try and get as many reps as he can. And let's say he works really hard and he pumps out and he gets 4 reps. So he writes that in the actual box, and then his effort, he puts that in, he goes, gosh, I did everything I could, I got a 10. I pushed myself as hard as I possibly could. Then here he's going to add up those 3 sets, 175 plus 180 plus 170, for a set total of 525. Now let's go up to the top and record his new rep records. So what's his new rep record for 4? Well, we're going to write it in the next available box. He got 170, and the date he did that on was 2-1. His new record for 3 is 180. That was also done today on 2-1. That also applies to his 2, done on 2-1, and his 1. So he broke 4 personal records on that workout on just the parallel squat. But what's great about this is he actually broke a 5th. If you look down here, we're going to scroll in a little bit nice and tight here. If you look at his set total from the previous 3x3, he trained and did a 460-pound set total. Today, his set total was 525 pounds. That's a huge difference in a 4-week cycle. He gained 65 pounds of total strength on a corresponding set rep scheme in just a 4-week cycle. That's another record. So this student actually broke 5 personal records on 1 lift. And again, the goal is 8 records a week. Every single time they lift, auxiliaries, core lifts, performance, anything they do that's a record, that's what we want to record and be excited about, showing them progress. And if we're always comparing against their best self and not against other students, they're going to be motivated to come back and make themselves better. The key here is not them versus others. It's them versus their best self, breaking personal records, and being motivated to continue to train, whether that's for an athletic environment or for lifelong fitness. We've gone over each week in a 5-week cycle to see how each set and rep scheme breaks down one working set at a time, and how kids can break records and see great success and get very excited about their own personal gain. A couple other things that really help make this thing work. First thing is your record chart. This is in the back of your set rep log book, whether that's the app or the book or be the computer. It always records your records. It lets you know how many records you're breaking, which is so important for the kids to see that progress. At the end of every workout, they should be writing in how many records they broke for that day, and then adding them up for the week, by month, by semester, and then seeing themselves progress. This is also such a great tool to show administrators, parents, to say, look how much progress the student has made in our weightlifting class. Okay, one great tool, an additional part of proper recording. A couple other things, making sure we get a proper warm-up. Obviously, we talked quickly here about the different sets and reps, but we just kind of quickly went over that concept of the weights, but not really how to get to those first working sets. We always want to have a good warm-up. You can see here, there's a breakdown of the different weights you should be lifting on the different levels of where you start, and that's kind of our warm-up guideline. However, sometimes you don't have time for that. So we have a simple rule, is you always have got to do one warm-up set, anywhere from 50 to 75% of your first working set. It should be at roughly the same amount of repetitions as your first working set's going to be, to make sure that we're ready to go as we get in and do that resistance training. So get your warm-up in place, make sure the kids know how to get that implemented before they get into their working sets. Another aspect that's really, really important is missing repetitions, which it happens. Kids miss reps. So we have a simple rule of thumb. Let's say a student's on a 5-rep workout. They're doing 5 reps on their first set. Obviously the workout is 5. If they get 4, we can still record that. If they get 3, it doesn't count. So we have what's called the 1-rep rule. If they miss it by 1 rep, we can still record following this basic rule of thumb. If they miss it by more than 1 rep, it's like the set never happened, it doesn't exist, lighten the load, and do the set again. Here's the basic 1-rep rule. If the student was going for, let's say, 150 pounds for 5, and they got 4 reps, they're in the 100-pound category. So for every 100-pound category that they're lifting in, you would subtract 5 pounds and record that weight. So if he was trying 150 for 5, but he only got it for 4, we'd record 145. Let's say he was doing 225 pounds for 5, and he only got it for 4, then he'd record 215. He'd subtract 10 pounds because he's in the 200-pound category. It's 5 pounds for every 100-pound category that you're in. All that we're really saying here is if he were to have started that set of 5 at 145, chances are very good he would have gotten that last rep, so we can still count it for 5 reps at that lesser weight. That makes the recording simple, and it gives the kids that idea that they can never pick a weight that they can't at least get up to 1 rep less than what the workout states. So 1-rep rule, 5 pounds per 100. Okay, from there, a couple last things. The app, the Set Rep Log app, does all these things for you that we showed here in a very simple format. As the teacher coach, you can see how many records are being broken. It adds things up automatically. It gives you your record totals for each student. It's a great way to format your classroom, incorporate technology into your learning. You also have the other option of what's called the Beat the Computer. The Beat the Computer is a format that can be implemented into your school on your intranet and be utilized across all teachers and coaches. Kids get a printout, they can go in, break the records, those can be recorded, you can print top 10 reports, personal power rankings, all sorts of different things that help the kids stay motivated to break personal records. A lot of options in this. The last thing, and probably the most important, the goal here is the student breaking personal records, competing against their best efforts. One of the greatest tools to help with that is this 1 1/4 pound plate. I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but if a kid breaks records at a very small increase, but they're consistent, let's say you had 1 1/4 on each side, and you were able to do that increase each week, so 2.5 pounds a week. And if you look at a basic school year, roughly 40 weeks of training, which is what most kids get throughout a school year if they're consistent, 40 weeks at 2.5 pounds a week, that's a 100-pound increase in a 40-week cycle. That would allow the student to really see gains as they progressed each year in school, from freshman to sophomore to junior, and then going into their senior year. They'd be able to get stronger with perfect form, never sacrificing technique for pounds. Having light tools that allow for progress is a huge point that we need to make as coaches. It's not about the weight as much as it is about progress. Always training with perfect form and breaking personal records. Hey, have fun training your kids, helping them see success. We're here to help you with anything we can. There's a ton of information on our site. Just know that the focus for every student is to have fun and see themselves get better, and know that all this work is really paying off.